Hello everyone, welcome to my video. In this video I'm going to demonstrate how to test mediation using process macro in SPSS. First of all, let's try to understand what the mediator is. Mediator is a third variable that explains how or why the association happens between two variables. Let's say we have supportive workplace and task performance as the independent variable and outcome variable. So supportive variable is positively related to task performance. But why supportive workplace impacts task performance? Or what is the mechanism between the supportive workplace and task performance? I think the work engagement could be a good mediator between the supportive workplace and task performance. So in such a model, what we are testing is whether the impact of supportive workplace on task performance through work engagement. In other words, actually we are testing a causal path where the supportive workplace affect our work engagement, and in turn work engagement influence task performance. So sometimes also this kind of relationship is defined as the indirect effect. Okay, so let's go ahead with some basic terminology. So you can see the simple model or unmediated model. So total effect, or C, is the total effect of X variable on Y variable in an unmediated model. And this is our mediated model. In the mediated model we have three kinds of paths actually. So the first path, the impact of X variable on mediator, which is indicated by A, and the B is the path actually is used to show the impact of mediator on Y variable or outcome variable. And also in this mediated model you can see the C prime. This is the C prime, actually we call it direct effect. In other words, the effect of X variable on Y variable while the controlling for our mediator. This is direct effect. And also in the mediated model we have indirect or mediation effect, which is A times B. So when we multiply A by B, then we can calculate the indirect effect. And all equation could be used for this model, as you can see. And in order to test mediation, actually, we can say that there are two kinds of approach in the literature. The first one, traditional approach, or sometimes they call it the causal steps approach, which was developed by Baron and Canny, 1986. Actually, it's rigid and also it has a low statistical power. Therefore, there are many criticisms about this approach. And the second approach is bootstrapping approach, which is more flexible and statistically more powerful approach than the traditional approach that we're going to concentrate on this bootstrapping approach to test our sample model. Okay, let's go ahead and let's try to understand the, first of all, causal step approach in quick. So, according to this approach, actually, in order to decide that there is a mediational effect in a model, we have to check some certain steps, and we have to make sure that these conditions are met to decide about the mediation. The first one is actually X must predict Y variable significantly, which is pet C. And second condition, according to this approach, is X or independent variable must predict a mediator, which is pet A. And the third condition for this causal step approach is when the X and M are both added to the multiple regression model. As you can see on my screen, mediator must predict Y variable significantly, which is pet P. And in this model, actually, full mediation occurs if the relationship between the X variable and Y variable is non-significant. Okay. On the other hand, a partial mediation happens if the relationship between the x variable and y variable, which is c prime, is reduced. And according to this approach, at the last step, we need to also use subtle test to determine if there's a significant reduction in the effect of x on y when m is actually controlled. So this is the basic actually approach to test mediation, but we will not use that one because, as you can see on my screen, here, there are actually many criticism about this Bernanke causal step approach. You can see it from my screen. I will not dive into it, but if you would like to read it, you can, of course, look at my slides and my references. They are actually so helpful, actually, if you would like to understand more about the Bernanke method. Okay, and the second method is bootstrapping approach. This is the actually, let's say, contemporary approach and more robust actually approach in order to test mediation analysis. According to this approach, actually an indirect effect or mediation still actually happen even in the absence of path A, B, and C. So it's a flexible approach. And also, based on this approach, the significance of indirect effect or mediation effect should be tested by bootstrapping approach instead of subtle tests. So bootstrapping basically means resampling a single data set to create many simulated samples, to calculate the more reliable confidence interval for the indirect effect. Actually, the basic advantage of this bootstrapping approach is to handle the non-normal distribution that is for the design is more powerful than the previous traditional approach. Also, according to this approach, the concepts of full mediation and partial mediation are not appropriate. They are controversial, so this kind of terminology shouldn't be used for mediation according to this contemporary approach. And the last issue for the bootstrapping approach for the mediation, when the indirect effect or A times B is significant as the results of the bootstrapping approach, then we can decide that, okay, our mediation model is supported. Okay, so this is how we can test mediation by using bootstrapping approach. And for the example, actually, I have this data set and this model. As you can see, my sample comes from 173 employees. Let's say we use 5-point Likert scales, and as you can see, we have this mediated model. Job satisfaction, commitment is the mediator, and turnover intention is our outcome variable or dependent variable. And I hypothesize that there are 4 hypotheses in my model. So H1 actually the hypothesis between the job satisfaction and commitment, and H2 job satisfaction is negatively related to turnover intention is here, C, and H3 is commitment is negatively related to turnover intention, which is H3, and it's indicated by the path of B. And the last hypothesis actually is mediation hypothesis, which is H4, commitment mediate relationships between the job satisfaction and turnover intention. We can visualize this H4 just like that. Of course, depending on the model, you don't have to actually propose all these hypotheses. It depends on your conceptual model. But I would like to show you all these hypotheses, actually how we can test by using process macro. Okay, and this is the steps in SPSS using process macro, but I will actually go to my SPSS dataset, and I'm gonna show you how we can test it using process macro. This is our actually database or data set. So job satisfaction, let's say job satisfaction is our independent variable, commitment is our, of course, organizational commitment, I mentioned about it. Commitment is our mediator, age is our control or co-age variable, and turnover is our dependent variable or outcome variable. Okay, how we can test it mediation? Very easy. Of course, before doing this analysis with process macro, first of all, you have to download the process macro from the Hayes website, and then you should install it to your computer, right? Okay, so let's go to the analysis. First of all, you need to go to the analyze, then you need to go to the regression, and under the regression you will see the process macro. Of course, you may see the different version of the process macro. Actually, it doesn't matter, just use the one of them, okay? And we will use the process macro version 4. Click it, then you will see this actually panel. The first of all, we should move our variable to the related panels. So job set selection was our X variable, it should be here, and commitment was our mediator variable. For that reason, I need to move it to here. And the turnover intention was my dependent variable. For that reason, it should be go to the Y variable here. And for the education purposes, I just add the age as a control or covariate variable, so I need to move the age here. Okay, then I should go to the options menu. I need to tell to the process macro about my options. I think for the mediation, this and that one could be useful for interpretation. I choose that one, then hit the continue. And then in the main actual panel, we have to also select our model. Since we are testing a simple mediation model, for the reason we should choose the model 4. Depending on, of course, your model, you should tell the process macro which model that you are actually testing. And let's keep the rest as the same because I would like to also use 95 confidence interval. Then we are actually all set. Then we can click the OK. Okay, then actually SPSS will bring the results for me, and you can see the results of process macro. However, I'm gonna copy all these results to my PowerPoint, and I will tell from my PowerPoint about the analysis. Okay, so the first actually output is that one. Let me try to point my pen. Okay, so first of all, you can see some basic information about your model. So we are testing model 4, which is basic or simple mediation model. Turnover intention was our Y variable, which is outcome, and job selection was X, commitment was mediator variable, and we used the age as the covariate, as you can see, and our sample size 173. Okay, and this is the first regression actual model. In this model, actually, we are testing the, let me see, path A. In other words, we are testing the impact of job satisfaction on commitment. For this reason, our outcome variable is commitment, as you can see. And this is the model summary table. This is multiple R square or explained variance. And this is F value, degrees of freedom, and the P value for the R square, right? And in here, as you actually you can see the our coefficient value. This is of course intercept, and this is the job satisfaction, which is our X variable here, as you can see here, and this is our slope, or let's say beta coefficient. It is 0.174. As you can see, we should look at the p-value. As you can see, our p-value is clearly lower than our alpha, which is lower than 0.05. For that reason, I can say that yes, job satisfaction is positively related to commitment. As you can see, for that reason, I just write it down here. And also, you can see the impact of age. I think it is not significant. Also, below the table, you can see the some coefficient value in terms of standardized coefficient. If you would like to actually report standardized coefficient, you should use this value instead of that one. Okay. And let's go ahead to another table. In this table, actually, you can see the total effect model. This is another regression actually model, as you can see. Actually, in this model, we are testing the both total effect here, okay, as you can see, which is C, so the impact of job satisfaction on turnover intention, right? So for that reason, our outcome variable should be turnover intention, as you can see. Okay, same thing, same model summary, actual values, and when we look at the job satisfaction, as you can see, our beta coefficient is minus 0.266, right? So I can say that job satisfaction negatively influence the turnover intention because our p-value is less than our alpha level. For the reason, I'm gonna write this value here as the C. And also you can see the standard coefficient here, okay? And let's go ahead, and another table, you will see the actually regression results for the testing the pet of B, which means that in this model actually our outcome variable is a turnover intention, as you can see it. So here turnover intention. However, in this case we are actually including our job satisfaction, commitment, and age as the predictor variable for the turnover intention. First of all, when we look at the actually job satisfaction, the impact of job satisfaction on the turnover intention, as you can see, our job satisfaction actually impact the turnover intention negatively. However, as you can see, our value is not significant because our p-value is above our alpha level, or 0.05. Okay, so this is actually C prime. We call it C prime. Okay, or direct effect, same thing. And when we look at the impact of commitment on turnover intention, actually here, as you can see, our coefficient, of course, this is unstandardized coefficient, minus 0.57, okay? So which means that commitment is negatively related to turnover intention, as you can see. For that reason, I just write here, okay? And then we should look at the last outcome of process macro, as you can see on my screen. In here, actually, let me open my pen. Yes, you can see the total direct and indirect effect of X variable on Y variable here. Okay. However, as we have already interpreted the total effect, direct effect, we're gonna mainly concentrate on the indirect effect in this portion of the output. Okay, so as we're gonna report the unstandardized effect, so we can just focus on this portion here. If you would like to actually report the standardized version of the beta coefficient, then you can, of course, pay attention to this portion of this output. Okay, so regarding the indirect effect, actually, this is our indirect effect. As you may remember, the indirect effect is the effect of A times B. So this is our A pet times B pet. When you multiply A and by B, you will get these results, which is minus 0.099, almost, let's say, minus 100. So this is our indirect effect in terms of size. However, in order to decide whether this indirect effect is significant or not, we have to pay attention to the upper and lower confidence interval based on bootstrapping results. So if the upper and lower confidence interval does not contain 0, then we can conclude that the indirect effect is significant. Okay, so this is the lower confidence interval, and this is the upper confidence interval. As you can see, our confidence interval does not include 0, so both are actually in minus value. Okay, for that reason, we can conclude that yes, the indirect effect in this analysis is significant, as our lower and upper confidence interval does not contain 0 value in between. Okay, so then question becomes how we can report all these different results in APA7 style, or can we use a sample write-up or something like that? Yes, we can actually report all these results in our sample write-up, as you can see on my screen. So I just explain here how we can actually test our hypothesis here, and then once again I just remind what was our first hypothesis, and I report here our unstandardized beta coefficient with the p-value here, and the same for the second hypothesis, and also same for the third hypothesis here. And also remember that our fourth hypothesis was about the mediation, so I explain here that we test the indirect effect or mediation hypothesis by using a percentile bootstrap estimation approach with 5,000 resampling. So also I report here that our indirect effect is significant because our confidence interval did not include 0. Okay, so this is how you can report your results in your research or report or thesis. Of course, in addition to that word text, you need to also attach a table regarding your results. For example, you can also make this kind of table in order to show your readers of your multiple regression analysis by using process macro. In here, actually, you can see our pet A. Okay, so this is the results of pet A. You can see for example, also F value R square here, that is comes from the process macro outcome. Okay, and the second portion of my table is here. In that case, actually, our turnover intention was outcome variable. So in the first model, I just tested actually our total effect, which is C, so the impact of satisfaction on turnover intention. And the model 3, I just put here the results of our direct effect, which is C prime, and the impact of mediator on Y variable, which is B. And the very below of the table, you can see our indirect effect results that also comes from actually my process macro. That's all. Thank you for your attention, guys. See you on another video. Bye bye.